April, the Atlantic Ocean. 147 passengers and crew members on a luxury cruise ship called the MV Hondius believed they were embarking on the journey of a lifetime. They had no way of knowing that an invisible enemy was already aboard. By May 2nd, 2026, the world would wake up to a nightmare. A deadly outbreak of Hantavirus spreading across international borders, confounding health experts, and leaving 3 people dead in its wake. This is the story of how a virus, one most people have never heard of, managed to breach the defenses of modern medicine and spread across continents. This is the story of Hantavirus. Part 1. What is Hantavirus? The origin of darkness. Hantaviruses are not new. They have existed for centuries, perhaps longer, quietly spreading through rodent populations across the globe. The virus gets its name from the Hantan River in Korea, where it was first identified during the Korean War in the 1950s. Since then, scientists have discovered over 50 different strains of Hantavirus, each with its own signature of devastation. But what exactly is this microscopic killer that has captured the world's attention? Hantaviruses are RNA viruses, genetic blueprints of destruction wrapped in a protein coat, no larger than 1/1,000,000th of an inch. They belong to a family called Bunnyaviridae, and they are obligate parasites, meaning they have only one purpose: to replicate themselves inside a host cell, destroying it in the process. The virus primarily lives in rodents, particularly in the saliva, urine, and feces of infected mice and rats. These creatures are the virus's natural reservoir, yet they rarely show signs of illness. They are living, breathing containers of a pathogen that can reduce human beings to critical condition within days. The Andes strain, humanity's new adversary. But not all hantaviruses are equal in their threat to humanity. In May 2026, the world discovered something terrifying. The strain circulating aboard the MV Hondius was the Andes virus, the most dangerous hantavirus known to medical science. Why? Because the Andes virus has done something no other hantavirus has perfected. It has learned to spread from human to human. This is the turning point. This is why experts are watching. This is why governments are mobilizing. Part 2. The chain of infection. How it begins. To understand how hantavirus spreads, we must first understand its origin, a story that begins in the foothills of South America. Our index case, the first patient, was a Dutch man in his 60s. Before boarding the MV Hondius on April 1st, 2026, he embarked on a 4-month road trip spanning Chile, Uruguay, and Argentina. He was exploring the backcountry, breathing in the air of wilderness areas where infected rodents lived. Somewhere along that journey, in a cabin, a tent, or perhaps just while hiking through rodent-infested terrain, he inhaled viral particles. A single breath. That's all it took. The mechanism: respiratory infection. When an infected rodent's droppings aerosolize, when dust particles containing the virus become airborne, inhalation is the primary route of infection. The virus enters the lungs and begins its relentless multiplication. But there's more. The virus can also enter through contaminated wounds or cuts when handling infected rodent materials. It can enter through ingestion of contaminated food. It can enter through direct contact with an infected animal's saliva, urine, or blood. The virus is remarkably stable. It can survive for hours in dried rodent droppings. It can persist in contaminated environments. It lies dormant, waiting for an opportunity. The incubation, the silent period. This is where the danger multiplies. Once infected, a person may feel nothing for days. The incubation period, the time between infection and symptom onset, ranges from 4 to 42 days, an average of 2 to 3 weeks. During this time, the infected person appears healthy. They walk among crowds. They sleep in shared cabins. They eat at communal tables. The virus is multiplying in their lungs, yet there is no outward sign. The index case boarded the ship on April 1st. He was fine, or so it seemed. Part 3. The symptoms. When silence becomes screaming. Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, or HPS, is what happens when the virus has completed Infection. The infected person experiences muscle aches, particularly in the thighs, hips, and back, the large muscle groups. Fever, often reaching 101 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit, headaches and fatigue, gastrointestinal disturbances, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. Sound familiar? Like the flu? Like a common cold? This is the virus's strategy of deception. Most people with these symptoms would not immediately think deadly viral infection. They might rest, take over-the-counter medications, and hope it passes. They would continue their daily activities. They would interact with others. This is what happened on the MV Hondius. Stage 2. The turning point. Days 5 through 7. Then comes the shift, the moment when the disease reveals its true nature. The fever continues or worsens. The patient develops a dry cough. Shortness of breath begins, subtle at first, then progressively severe. Chest discomfort. The lungs are being attacked from within. A chest X-ray at this stage reveals the terrifying truth. Bilateral interstitial infiltrates. In simpler terms, both lungs are filling with fluid. The body is drowning from the inside. This is when the infected person finally seeks medical help. This is often too late. Stage 3. Critical condition. Days 8 through 14. The disease progression accelerates with frightening speed. Acute respiratory distress syndrome, or ARDS, develops. The lungs can no longer exchange oxygen effectively. Hypotension occurs, meaning blood pressure plummets dangerously low. Shock sets in. The heart cannot pump blood effectively. Organs begin to fail. Multi-organ dysfunction follows. The kidneys fail. The liver struggles. The heart weakens. Patients require mechanical ventilation. They need intensive care. They need miracles. The mortality rate. The grim statistics. Here's the brutal truth. 38% of people who develop respiratory symptoms from Hantavirus die. More than 1 in 3. These are not academic statistics. They are fathers, mothers, daughters, sons. On the MV Hondius, 3 people have already died. One was the index case himself. Another was his wife. The third was a fellow passenger. Part 4. How it spreads. The pandemic potential. Most hantaviruses are not a pandemic threat. Hantavirus infection is primarily acquired through contact with infected rodents. It is a disease of people who venture into rodent-infested areas. Farmers, hunters, hikers, researchers. But the Hantavirus changed the game. The human-to-human transmission, humanity's vulnerability. The Hantavirus is the only hantavirus known to spread between humans. This transmission occurs through respiratory secretions. When an infected person coughs or sneezes, viral particles aerosolize into the air. These invisible droplets can travel up to 6 feet, settling in the respiratory passages of those nearby. Transmission also occurs through close physical contact, sharing utensils, cups, or food, touching contaminated surfaces and then touching the face, exposure to blood or body fluids of the infected person. Transmission can occur through intimate contact, kissing, sharing a bed. The virus is present in respiratory secretions, saliva, and other body fluids. On a cruise ship, where hundreds of people share confined spaces, dining areas, elevators, and cabins, these conditions are perfect for transmission. The cascade of cases. This is what happened to the MV Hondius. The index case developed
The contact tracing nightmare. Authorities are scrambling to trace everyone who had
Contact with confirmed cases. This includes 29 to 40 passengers who disembarked before the outbreak was recognized, flight crew members from the Johannesburg to Amsterdam flight, hospital staff in multiple countries, friends and family members of the deceased, communities in South Africa, the Netherlands, Germany, the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Singapore, Spain, France, and Switzerland. The virus is no longer confined to one ship. It is now a multinational, multi-continental concern. Part 5. The effects: destruction at every level. Hantavirus does not kill its victims quickly and mercifully. It kills them slowly, systematically, by destroying the very organs they depend on to live. The respiratory collapse. The lungs are the primary target. The virus invades the capillaries, the tiny blood vessels that surround the lung's air sacs. The vessel walls become porous. Fluid leaks into the lungs. The patient cannot breathe properly. Oxygen levels in the blood plummet. This is why patients require mechanical ventilation. A tube is inserted through the mouth into the windpipe. A machine breathes for them because their own lungs have betrayed them, but even this may not be enough. The cardiovascular collapse. The virus doesn't stop at the lungs. As the disease progresses, it causes myocarditis, inflammation of the heart muscle itself, weakening its ability to pump. Capillary leak occurs. Blood vessels throughout the body become leaky, allowing fluid to escape into tissues. Hypotension develops. Blood pressure drops to dangerously low levels. Shock sets in. The heart cannot maintain adequate circulation to vital organs. Doctors are forced to administer powerful vasopressors, medications that artificially constrict blood vessels to maintain blood pressure. It is a desperate measure, a temporary stalling of the inevitable. The renal failure. The kidneys, deprived of adequate blood flow due to shock, begin to fail. Waste products accumulate in the blood. Dialysis becomes necessary. The patient's body can no longer regulate its own chemistry. The multi-organ dysfunction. As shock progresses, all organs suffer. The liver fails. The body cannot process toxins or produce clotting factors. Neurological complications emerge: confusion, altered consciousness, seizures. Coagulopathy develops. The blood cannot clot properly, leading to internal hemorrhaging. Metabolic acidosis occurs. The body's pH balance becomes critically abnormal. The psychological impact. Those who recover, and some do, though not many, face long-term complications. Chronic fatigue, cognitive dysfunction, reduced exercise capacity, post-traumatic stress disorder from the trauma of critical illness. And those who don't recover face death, conscious, aware, gasping for breath, surrounded by beeping machines and desperate family members. Part 6. The global response, racing against time. When the WHO issued its alert on May 2nd, 2026, the global health response shifted into emergency mode. The cruise ship quarantine. The MV Hondius, still at sea with 147 people aboard, became a floating hotspot of international concern. Medical teams were mobilized. The ship was diverted to Cape Verde for supplies. It later proceeded toward Tenerife, Spain, despite objections from local officials who feared contamination of the island. Passengers began to be evacuated. Those who had traveled to multiple countries had to be traced. Those who had been in contact with confirmed cases had to be isolated. The contact tracing operation. Health authorities in multiple countries launched one of the most intensive contact tracing operations in recent memory. They had to identify everyone on the ship, 147 people, everyone on flights with confirmed cases, hundreds of people, everyone in hospitals where patients were treated, staff members, visitors, other patients, everyone in communities where confirmed cases were identified. This is not a simple task. It requires coordination across borders, language barriers, and jurisdictional complications. The testing protocols, PCR testing and polymerase chain reaction, became the gold standard. These tests can detect the viral RNA in blood, respiratory secretions, and other body fluids, but the tests take time. Isolation measures. In hospitals across multiple countries, patients infected with Andes virus are being treated in isolation wards, negative pressure rooms where air flows into the room but not out, preventing viral escape. Healthcare workers wear full personal protective equipment, N95 respirators, face shields, gowns, gloves. One mistake, a contaminated needle stick, a splash of body fluid to the face, and a healthcare worker becomes the next case. Part 7. Why now? The increasing threat. Hantavirus has always existed. Why is it becoming a concern now? Climate change and rodent populations. As global temperatures rise, the ranges of rodent species are shifting. Warmer winters mean higher rodent survival rates. More food availability in certain regions means larger rodent populations. Humans are increasingly encroaching on previously wild areas, creating more opportunities for contact. Increased human travel. In 1926, someone with hantavirus could not have spread it globally. Today, with international flights, cruises, and global commerce, an infected person can be on the other side of the world before symptoms even appear. The index case in this outbreak traveled from Argentina to a cruise ship to multiple countries. In the pre-modern era, his disease would have died with him. Urbanization and habitat destruction. As cities expand into previously rural areas, humans and rodents come into closer contact. Rodent populations in urban centers can be massive. Cities provide shelter, food waste, and protection for rodent species. If Andes virus ever took hold in an urban rodent population, the consequences would be catastrophic. The evolution concern. Perhaps most worrisome to epidemiologists is the possibility of mutation. RNA viruses mutate constantly. The Andes virus already achieved human-to-human transmission. What if it mutates further? What if it becomes more transmissible? What if it becomes airborne to a greater degree? These are not merely hypothetical concerns. These are the nightmares keeping epidemiologists awake at night. Part 8. What can be done? The fragile hope. There is no cure for hantavirus. There is no specific antiviral treatment. There is no vaccine currently available for the general population. What exists is supportive care, the fundamental, life-saving, yet often insufficient tools of intensive care medicine. Supportive care, buying time. Patients receive mechanical ventilation for respiratory support. They receive vasopressors for blood pressure maintenance. Dialysis is provided for kidney failure. Careful fluid management is essential. Monitoring for secondary infections is continuous. These measures can buy time. They can allow the immune system to mount a response. Some patients survive, many do not. The vaccine. Hope. Researchers are working on vaccines for hantavirus. Clinical trials are underway, but vaccines take years to develop, test, and distribute. They would not have helped the passengers on the MV Hondius. The public health response. In the short term, the response is containment, isolation of confirmed and suspected cases, quarantine of close contacts, testing of potentially exposed individuals, monitoring for symptom development, rapid medical care for those who develop symptoms. This worked for previous Andes virus outbreaks in South America, which were smaller and more limited. The question is, will it work for an outbreak that has already spread across multiple continents? Conclusion. The unknown future. As we sit here on May 10th, 2026, the future remains uncertain. The MV Hondius is being evacuated. Confirmed cases are being treated in hospitals across the world. Contact tracers are working around the clock. Health authorities are vigilant, but the virus has already escaped containment. 3 people are dead. 8 are confirmed or probable cases. An unknown number of exposed individuals are being monitored, and somewhere in the global community, there may be infected people who don't yet know they are infected.
Hantavirus, a virus most people had never heard of a week ago, has forced the world to confront an uncomfortable truth. We are not as protected as we believed. A single person on a remote road trip in South America can inadvertently trigger an international health crisis. The virus that lives in rodent populations can cross the species barrier. The disease confined to wilderness areas can board a cruise ship. The infection,
limited to one patient, can spread through close contact. As we move forward, we must ask ourselves several critical questions. What other pathogens are waiting to spill over from animal populations? How prepared are our health systems for the next outbreak? Can contact tracing work in a hyper-connected world? What happens when a more transmissible strain emerges? The story of the MV Hondius hantavirus outbreak is still being written. We do not yet know how many people will become infected. We do not know if human-to-human transmission will continue to spread. We do not know if we will look back on this as a contained crisis or the beginning of something far more sinister. What we do know is this: the virus is real, the threat is genuine, and the world has just been reminded that sometimes the smallest, the most invisible enemies can pose the greatest danger. Key statistics and timeline: MV Hondius outbreak timeline, April 1st, 2026. Index case boards cruise ship after 4-month South American road trip, April 6th to 8th, 2026. Symptoms begin April 11th, 2026. Index case dies aboard ship, April 24th, 2026. Body removed. Wife disembarks, flies to Johannesburg, April 26th, 2026. Wife dies in Johannesburg Hospital, May 2nd, 2026. WHO receives notification. Outbreak officially reported. May 4th, 2026. 7 cases confirmed or suspected. 3 deaths. May 8th to 9th, 2026. 8 confirmed or probable cases. Cases in 6 or more countries. Hantavirus facts. Mortality rate for Andes. Virus: 38% of those who develop respiratory symptoms. Incubation period: 4 to 42 days, with an average of 14 to 21 days. Only hantavirus with human-to-human transmission. Andes virus. Number of hantavirus strains: over 50. Countries currently monitoring cases: 12 or more. The threat level: global population risk, currently low according to the WHO assessment. Escalation potential: moderate to high if mutations occur or urban rodent populations become infected. The critical factor: continued monitoring and rapid response to new cases.